So one of the most quintessential sounds for the harp is the glissando, which is a slide between two notes. How exactly do you notate this on the harp? That's what we're going to delve into today. Hi, my name is Danielle Kuntz. I am a new music harpist and harp notation coach. Now today we're going to talk about the different aspects of notating a glissando. We're going to talk about how exactly to write it, whether you should be using the wavy line or some other form of notation. We're going to talk about how to navigate the start and the end pitch, as well as some other components that you need to include when notating your glissandi. So the first topic will be, should you use the wavy line or should you use the straight line? Now either option is correct, but there's a couple of considerations to keep in mind. The first is that the wavy line is a little bit simpler because you don't have any words involved. Sometimes the simplest is the best option. Now you are welcome to use the straight line glissando. If you do that, I would make sure that you do include the gliss word, the gliss notation. Otherwise, the straight line can mean something else, especially for beginner and intermediate harpists. Now, you don't have to include the gliss word on every single line. If you have like a sequence of glissandi or a couple in a row, you would include it on the first one, but not on subsequent ones. The exception is if the glissando is broken up by other notes, then you would want to restart the glissandi with the gliss notation. Now, one of the challenges is how to navigate your start and your end pitch. Now, a lot of this depends on the context in which you are writing. So generally speaking, if you're doing a single glissandi start and end note, those will more or less be accurate. You can notate those however you want, and the harpist will generally play those. If you have a sequence of glissandi or a turnaround glissandi, your start and end notes will likely be used to determine the general range rather than specific pitches. So if I were to play a single glissando, I would probably be starting on one note with one hand and ending it with one note in the other hand. So that's a C to C glissando. Now if I were doing a back and forth glissando, I'm fairly accurate, but sometimes my glissando ends on the D, starts on the B, things like that. So your start and end notes are going to be a little bit more to show the range. Now, if you want those really strict notes articulated, you might want to include another element of notation, like using an accent or a tenuto mark. However, if you really want those start and end notes to be ambiguous, you could also do like parenthetical notes or simply use your glissando lines to show the range without even including note heads. Now, to notate rhythm for your glissandi, it's helpful if the note value of your first note is the value of the duration of the glissando. So say you're doing a glissando and you want it to fill 2 beats. The value of that first note should be 2 beats, and then you end it on your third beat. Now, one of the big considerations for notating a glissando is what pitches should you be including? Now, generally speaking, if you just have a glissando without any pitch notations, the harpist will simply do a glissando on the pitches that they have at any given time. So if I played, and then I had a glissando after that, I would probably still be using that same pedal notation unless there was something different specified. So now if you want something specific specified, there's 2 components that you should include. Number 1 is writing out the first 7 notes of the glissando, and number 2 is including a pedal chart. Now, some harpists and composers may prefer to simply only use the pedal chart to notate the pitches. Personally, I feel like the pedal chart is there to interpret the notes on the page rather than giving new information. So if you're only to do one or the other, I would prefer writing out the first 7 notes and then including the pedal chart if you feel that's helpful. Now, if you have a sequence of glissandi, again, you only need to do that for the very first one, even if those glissandi are separated by rests. Now, if you have other notes between those, then you would still need to start out each glissando group with those first 7 notes. There's a couple different ways that you can actually notate this. Different notation softwares may have plugins to be able to help you generate this. But if you need a quick and easy method to do that, sometimes you can just write out those first 7 notes with 30-second notes, hide any rests that may occur, and then use the wavy line to extend the glissando to the top note. Note that you may need to manually stretch the notes a little bit to make room for the wavy line so it doesn't look cluttered. Now, one final consideration when notating glissando is to ensure that any rests that you include are there to clarify the rhythm. Now, if you're doing glissando notation, you might end up with some extra rests in your part. Now, if you have too many rests, it can also be confusing. If you have too few rests, it can also be confusing. So just double check the rests that are there to make sure that it does clarify the rhythm. Now, I have a helpful glissando checklist in a blog post. I will go ahead and link that in the description. If you have any other questions about glissandi or other aspects of writing for the harp, please leave a comment below. I also hope that you'll subscribe to my email newsletter where I send out bi-weekly emails with various little harp tips on writing for the harp. Until next time, I will see you later.